Joey.
Yeah.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
What?
That is the answer to a question that has been stewing in my brain for about 2 months now. And in the Empire of the Sun episode, you asked the question, is there a movie in which Joe Pantoliano does not play anyone shifty?
Oh, yes, I did, yeah.
And it's taken me this long. I genuinely woke up in the middle of the night and sat up and went, bad boys.
And your wife went, what? Is that what you dream about?
Yeah, I dream about Michael Bay films.
No, just bad boys in general.
So yeah, no, I don't.
I
don't, I swear. In that film,
Yeah.
Joe Pantoliano plays the chief of police to Will Smith and whoever the other guy, Martin Lawrence.
And he's a straight character. He's not sort of shifty in any way.
I think so.
Is this in the first or second Bad Boys?
Wait, I think he's in both.
Okay.
But I do wonder in the sequel, has he become shifty? I'm not too sure. But in the first one, I think that's your answer.
Oh, there you go. I will check that out and report back.
Okay. I'm not going to watch a Michael Bay film again to double check. Hello and welcome to the Bigger Boat Podcast. We are the film podcast where we're talking about Steven Spielberg's movies. We watch them one by one and talk about them. My name's Luke, as always, and I am joined by the Sam Neill to my Jeff Goldblum, the Compy to my T-Rex, Joey. Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm very good, thank you.
Excellent. I really don't know how this episode is going to go because we just mentioned that we're both quite tired. It's Friday evening. I've been at work. Joey's had a big journey. I almost called you my wife there, Julia.
Ah, thank you.
Joey's had a big journey from Bristol. We're quite tired. We're quite hungry, and we've had a beer.
Yeah.
So
I was just saying, this is good. This is almost it's the same sort of setup as our first episode, where we sort of were a little bit merry and just sort of rambling and.
Where it's an absolute shambles.
Exactly.
So
welcome back.
Nostalgia for the past.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about a Steven Spielberg sequel, which is a rare beast.
Having just said, here we go again.
Absolutely.
We are literally analysing that.
We are. Yes. We are talking about Jurassic Park 2, The Lost World, which Steven Spielberg says this is the only sequel that he's actually made. He says Indiana Jones isn't really a sequel. They have the same characters, but then they're sort of individual adventures. But this one is the first true and only sequel he's ever made.
Right.
Yeah, so
yes,
purists amongst us.
Yes, because it's not a standalone adventure, is it? It's a continuation.
It's a continuation of the story. And this was the first, I think I mentioned this in the first episode or so, but this was the movie that made me cry because Jurassic Park upset me so much as a child because I didn't like people getting eaten that when I got The Lost World on VCR.
VHS.
What's VCR?
VCR is the cassette that you play.
Yeah, that's the Buggles song I'm thinking of.
You put your tape into the VCR, don't you? And press record.
Put all the blame on VCR. That's it.
Yeah.
So I got The Lost World on VHS for Christmas. My nana gave it to me, and I burst into tears because the thought of watching someone being eaten again really upset me.
So how did you handle Silence of the Lambs? Because technically it's a sequel, and he eats people.
I pissed myself. Just there and then, immediately.
And yet you imitate him so well. Well, hello, Julia.
That's really quite horrible, Jerry. Why I wear the mask in my my free time is my own business. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about The Lost World a little bit today, but let's just ask, how are you anyway? How's your last week been? What have you been up to?
So very last minute, I had this week off right before sort of the mad Christmas mania that's going to happen at work.
Yeah.
So I took a little trip to Bristol and things.
Very nice. Did you watch a film while you were out there?
Not while I was out there, just before actually. I actually went to the cinema, if you can imagine that. That was the last movie that I saw, was on the big screen.
What did you see?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Okay. I'd be interested to know, because I haven't seen this yet. What did you think of it?
It's really good performances.
Okay.
There is no getting away from the fact that every rock and roll film and life is more or less the same cycle, isn't it?
Yes.
They start off being a bit charismatic, and then they have some success, and then they lose their way. They get into drink and drugs.
Yeah.
And then some other dilemma, and then they all come back together.
Yeah. There is a biopic formula, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I hear it sticks very much to that.
Yes, it does.
But
the thing is, when it's done well, it can be good. Because, I mean, Walk the Line is exactly that, but it's also got a really tender, like, love story to it.
Yeah. There's a review I read of it that said it was like Walk Hard never happened. Walk Hard being the sort of the parody of all the biopic movies starring John C. Reilly.
Yes.
And apparently it very much goes through all the beats that all the biopics do, very much from that sort of Walk the Line, Ray, that kind of era.
Yeah.
Hits all those the Bohemian Rhapsody hits all those beats.
It does. Okay. But it's just incredibly well acted. But yeah, it certainly does not stray from the formula. But it credited as executive producers are is it Roger Taylor, the drummer?
Roger Taylor and Brian May. Yeah.
So you can definitely tell they've had a hand in the production of it.
He did. So I hear they had a production in more of the live stuff, rather than the storylines and the dialogue. Their presence and how Queen themselves were actually represented on stage, especially during their famous 1986, I think it was 1986 Live Aid concert.
Yeah.
And Wembley the year before that also.
Yeah, it's a big part of it.
Yeah, so they made, Not John Deacon, the bassist?
No.
Not credited.
But he's played by Joe Mazzello, the little boy who plays Timmy in Jurassic Park.
Who I think makes a cameo in this movie.
He does.
Great segue.
There you go. But I need to ask you, before we get to that segue, if there's a movie you've watched.
So that's a poor segue.
But we'll come back to this segue.
Damn it. I was doing so well. So actually, Bohemian Rhapsody had quite an interesting production, didn't it? Because Bryan Singer was directing it.
Yes.
And then he left the production at some point during it. Do you know what point it was, or?
I don't know the exact, but I heard that the other director you're presumably just about to
Dexter Fletcher came in at the end to help shepherd it into the final product.
I think he directed. Again, don't quote me on this, but I think he directed at least a third of it.
Yeah. Okay.
It certainly, it was a fair chunk.
Does it feel like it's two movies?
No, it doesn't actually.
Okay.
I should say that finally it is Bryan Singer that gets the credit.
Right, okay.
It does say directed by Bryan Singer, so...
Fair enough.
It holds together.
Yeah. And I hear Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury is remarkable.
Yeah, really good. You can absolutely just go with it and think you are actually watching Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
Which is quite an accomplishment.
I did watch the trailer, and the thing that really impressed me was the guy who plays Brian May. The impression of him.
I know.
So spot on.
So good. Yeah. And that's one of the best things about the film, actually, is that Freddie is so flamboyant and stuff. And as I say, he's so good, you think you're just watching the real man.
Yeah.
And then Brian May is so like Brian May as we know him even now in interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
He is so grounded
that
the two, it's almost like worlds colliding or something. Just to quote Elton John. Worlds colliding.
I don't know that song.
We'll cut that out.
Shh, Tiny Dancer. Okay. That's beautiful, man.
But yeah, that's a really, really great relationship between sort of Brian May and Freddie.
Yeah.
Because you get the sense that Brian May sort of takes everything with a pinch of salt. He's like, oh right, yeah, very good.
Opera. Yeah, great.
Yeah. Very softly spoken and all this stuff. It's just really good. Did
you like Queen? I never really...
Yeah.
Are you a big Queen fan?
Well, I really like a good song,
rock ballad.
A good rock band I can really dance to.
Okay.
And they really deliver on that.
Top Queen song?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Okay.
Has to be. I think that's a contender for my first record,
Was it?
I think I bought it on... It obviously wasn't the original release, but I think I got a single because they released it 16 years later.
Yes.
Which also went to number one.
Yeah.
They tell you this at the end. So I think I got one of those.
Okay, very good. Because if you had the original, there's an original blue vinyl, I think. You can sell on eBay for about £10,000 to £15,000 for the original Bohemian Rhapsody single.
Wow, that's very good.
Yeah.
Could I spray it blue? Have you watched a film this week?
I have watched a film this week. The film I watched was Hotel Artemis.
Never heard of it.
It came out this year. and wasn't really well advertised at all. I think it came out in the summer. So it's directed by a guy called Drew Pearce, who's a Scottish screenwriter, and it's his first feature film. It is, how do I describe it? It's sort of like this sort of futuristic, cyberpunky action thriller.
Right, so I'm picturing a little bit like Mad Max.
Well, actually, it's set in an urban setting.
Right.
So it sort of starts off with, it's about 15 years in the future, I think. There are these big riots against big corporations, and it's an unsafe environment, and there's a bank robbery.
Mm-hmm.
It goes wrong, and the guy who is the leader of the bank robbers knows a place to stay safe, which is called the Hotel Artemis, which is essentially a hospital and a hotel for criminals.
Right.
So you go there, it's this Art Deco building with neon lights, and it can only keep like a few residents, and there you can recuperate from your injuries and be nursed by the main nurse, Jodie Foster, and her orderly, Dave Bautista. You know, the big ex-wrestler who is Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay, yeah.
So Jodie Foster's in this as sort of the main character. And you've got lots of different residents of there, all of which have some sort of different reason for being there, which gets revealed as we go on.
Yeah.
And things escalate as there's more animosity between all the residents of the hotel. And I really, really liked it. I don't think it did awfully at the box office, but it's well worth a watch if you can check it out. So the first half of it is more like escalating tension as you get to know the different residents of the Hotel Artemis and what they want. You've got Sophia Botella as this sort of dangerous femme fatale. You've got Charlie Day as an arms dealer who is completely obnoxious. And then you've got the guy who runs the hotel who comes in injured, Jeff Goldblum, as the Wolf King later on. And all of them have beef with each other. And the main rule of Hotel Artemis is you can't kill the other guests while you're in there.
I see.
The main appeal is Jodie Foster and Sophia Botella in this, who are just amazing. They're absolutely brilliant in this. Jodie Foster's has been aged like 15 years. She's got makeup on, and she's got this sort of tragic past. As it gets towards the end, it loses a bit of focus, I think. But the action sequences are good. But yeah, it does lose. It gets a bit messy. It loses a bit of focus. The plot threads don't really hang together sometimes, and you don't really concentrate on what's going on in the. I think it's meant to be like an allegory. The riots on the outside is meant to be an allegory for what's going on currently, but it doesn't really dwell on that well. But if you just take it as an action thriller with an interesting high concept premise, I think it's really good.
Okay.
And it's well worth a watch.
All right, I will check it out.
I think you should. It's very good. Yeah. So, shall we talk about The Lost World a little bit?
Yes, let's do it.
Fine. So, when's the last time you watched this?
It's one of those films which is always on TV, isn't it? And you always catch maybe 15 minutes of it or something, and you're like, oh, it's not as good as the original, and just flip, just flip the channel over to something else.
Sure.
As well. So I've seen little bits of it.
Yeah.
Here and there, but I can only consciously remember sitting down and actually watching it once, which was at the cinema.
Yeah.
In 1997.
You remember seeing it at the cinema?
Yeah. I remember hearing that this was coming out, and because it was announced that it was going to be made in 1995.
Yeah.
I was like, what? You mean I have to wait 2 years? Remember when you were little and you thought they literally made a movie in a weekend?
Yeah.
And you're like, what? I have to wait 2 years? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Bone idle,
But also the fact that Spielberg had 2 years off prior to that as well. But he just come off the back of making Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in 1 year.
Yeah.
So he did. Yeah. So there was a couple of years where he took as a time off.
Yeah.
I never that. So the thing I didn't understand when I was growing up is anytime an actor was or a director was like, well, I'm just going to take a year off or something like that. You can take a year off.
Yeah.
Imagine taking a year off in your job. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the dream. So yeah, he'd taken a few years off after Schindler's List, and if you've done that, I think that's completely fair enough.
Yeah, because that schedule must have been crazy.
Absolutely, yeah. Both in content and workload.
Yeah.
It's completely draining, I can imagine.
To make two brilliant films as well.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
you could understand almost if one was a little bit like by the wayside a little bit.
Exactly,
Fell
yeah,
by the
yeah.
wayside a little bit.
You
But
can
they're
imagine-
both brilliant. They're both classics. So.
I can imagine people only have a certain amount of creativity units, and they just give them all up in one. He just gave them all up in one go, and had to let them regenerate for a few years.
Yeah.
I think that's how it works.
Yeah. I have to say, like, having made a few films now, it's like it's amazing that Spielberg can churn the films out as quickly as he can.
Yeah, yeah.
And now think like, wow, you still have to work your socks off
Mm-hmm.
for 2 years to get a film out. It could easily take 5 or 6 years if you're just a little bit more leisurely about it.
Yeah, he really could, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Like, do a Terrence Malick or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Have like 12 years between films.
Yeah.
So no, I don't remember watching The Lost World at the cinema, because there's no way you would have got my wimpy self to a cinema to watch Jurassic Park, because I was such a coward.
You were more of a Titanic kind of man.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because they were first and second at the box office, weren't they? Oh, I don't know if they were out at the same time, but Titanic obviously was number one that year, and it seems like forever since.
It would have been that year, wouldn't it?
And it was the same year, and then second in the global box office takings was Jurassic Park: The Lost World.
Probably. What about Men in Black? That was up there as well, wasn't it?
Possibly, but it didn't mention that in the page that I was reading.
In the one source that you were reading.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm just trying to remember, did I go see Titanic at the cinema?
Man, you missed out if you didn't. It was...
Well, I didn't really get into films properly until a bit later. It's probably my teenage years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I actually grew a pair.
Literally
and metaphorically.
Because obviously, like, Titanic is a little bit soppy, and that's what's kind of funny and what you can sort of take the mickey out of it for a little bit. But it definitely is very good. It's very impressive.
It's true.
Stuff.
Every time I'm at the front of a boat and you do that, I don't know why, but I'm always Rose and Julia's always Jack. Read into that what you will. I think we should talk about The Lost World more. We should just watch it, remind ourselves a little bit of it, and then get into it in a bit more detail then.
Yeah.
I
think so. I do remember there's quite a few jumpy bits. I feel like he was very aware of the strengths of the first Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
The couple of your favourite scenes, know, the kitchen scene and all that kind of stuff. I remember there being a lot of more of those kind of jump out of your skin kind of moments and stuff.
I remember it being a lot sort in
yes,
this.
It was a lot darker.
Well, which is what the sort of trend for most sequels is these days, isn't it? But that sort of stems from Spielberg, doesn't it? So with Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
And with obviously this as well.
Yeah, and Star Wars as well.
Yes, exactly.
Goes dark in the middle. Yeah.
Exactly. So, because I remember there are good guys who are really likable characters who die.
Yes.
In this.
Yeah.
And that's what annoys me about some of the franchise movies these days, even the Jurassic World movies these days. The fact that you always know the good guys are going to stay alive.
Yes.
Which annoys me.
Because they have to keep them alive.
They have to keep them aliline because...
How are they going to bring out the next one?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what annoyed me about like the last... I think I mentioned this on our Jurassic Park episode. That's what annoyed me about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is that, spoiler alert, you know this is going to happen. I don't need to really spoil it, but none of the good guys are really in it.
Yeah.
Because of financial incentive and because of the studio wanting to keep money, that's why the good guys are going to die. And that trumps the narrative, and that's what annoys me.
And while we're on this topic, I'm going to mention this now rather than after we watch the movie.
Yeah.
And then you obviously know that Michael Crichton had killed off the Jeff Goldblum character.
Absolutely, yeah.
In the novels, and suddenly had to bring them back because he was under pressure to write a sequel.
And Richard Hammond as well. Oh wait, no, he's in Top Gear. He's the short one from Top Gear.
He's still alive at the moment.
John Hammond, played by Richard Attenborough.
Yes.
There we go. Richard Hammond in The Lost World.
Wow.
He'd be the first to go, to be honest.
Definitely. I was thinking exactly the same thing.
Yes, so because John Hammond also died in the first one, and these
he does. I remember in the
first book. But so Jeff Goldblum obviously takes centre stage in this movie.
Yes,
having been killed off in the first Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
and Michael Crichton had to write a novel of The Lost World, so he wrote a book sequel to Jurassic Park in which he retconned his own book to keep Ian Malcolm alive.
Yes,
which is very strange.
I did hear that he he adopted the Arthur Conan Doyle because you must know about the Arthur Conan Doyle sort of love-hating Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
He kind of always wanted to try and get away from, his main character.
Yes.
It makes sense that you would grow to love and hate your main character.
That's true, yeah.
Because that's what you're known for, and
Yeah.
it would feel a little bit like, oh, I'm repeating myself and all stuff. But you just can't help yourself. That's what I get the impression from.
So did Conan Doyle kill off his character and then bring him back?
Yeah, don't you remember? He sort of fell down a waterfall, Sherlock
Oh,
Holmes.
yeah. I've never read the Sherlock Holmes books, but
Right.
Yeah,
I know. Just because it's like a famous little episode, if you like, in the Arthur Conan Doyle story of
Fair enough.
Sherlock Holmes. That he's like, finally, I'm going to get rid of him, and he falls down this big waterfall, and suddenly he gets an idea for another book,
and it's like
suddenly he survived.
I got better.
Yeah.
He was only mostly dead.
Exactly.
And actually, interesting. Do you know what Arthur Conan Doyle's book after Sherlock Holmes was called?
The Lost World.
The Lost World.
Look
You're
at these
welcome.
segues.
Oh, we're getting so good at this.
Segues.
You're welcome, audience.
Yeah.
On that note, should we go watch the movie?
Let's do it.
Let's have another beer and let's watch the movie.
Okay, bye.
Bye!
Right, we are back.
We are back.
The Lost World.
Well, Richard Hammond was good in this, wasn't he? Made a surprise appearance.
Yeah.
Got eaten.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I
mean, there was entertaining moments.
Yes, it's an entertaining
It's
film.
an entertaining film.
It doesn't... I think it's quite telling that I did see this in 1997.
Yes.
Which I can still remember. I can remember quite a few films from 1997.
Yeah.
Titanic really... I have seen that again recently, but it really stayed with me and stuff.
Yeah.
As someone who knows for a fact I definitely have seen this film before,
yeah.
I remembered very, very little of it.
Okay.
I could remember them digging out of that... remember Julianne Moore and the young girl are digging trying to get under that
in
little...
the Velociraptor attack.
Yeah, and then suddenly the Velociraptor's head pops out from underneath. I could remember that bit because that bit was really jumpy in the cinema.
Yeah.
Pretty much the rest of it I had completely forgotten, which just is sort of saying something.
Yeah.
It hasn't got the staying power.
I don't know. I think, for me, the things I remember, because again, I haven't seen it since I was much younger, but the deaths are the ones that stay with me. So I remember each of those deaths of the main characters.
Do you?
Very clearly, yeah, because they did. It made me very uncomfortable, as I've established, seeing people being eaten as a kid. So the first T-Rex attack on Eddie, Peter Stormare dying from those compies.
Yeah.
Even that guy being crushed by the T-Rex. I all remember those very, very vividly.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember the feeling like a little... I think even at the time, in 1997, I was a little bit like, I feel like I've seen this before.
Sure.
Because the guy...
you have.
Because the guy getting eaten is very much like the lawyer getting eaten on the toilet in the first one.
I think it's different because he does a little flip. He grabs him by the leg and then sort of flips him around, then eats him by the head, and then he gets torn apart by the T-Rexes.
That's true.
It's actually how the bad guy dies in the latest Jurassic World film.
Right.
Almost a very similar death between two T-Rexes.
Yeah.
It was good. I think so if you don't think it's as memorable, can you pinpoint some things which you think make it different and compared to the first movie, or where does it lack? Where does it fall short?
Well, the main thing, I've actually got a little list here.
Go for it.
But the main thing I would say is Spielberg is so good, or Spielberg at his best, I should say.
Yeah.
That we've kind of established with Jaws and the first Jurassic Park. All about restraint.
Yeah.
Not showing the big scary monster too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about showing the devastation and the destruction of what it's capable of. Yeah. It's the sense of it being of what it's capable of, which is more scary than seeing it, I think. So to put it sort of bluntly, it's not enough wonder because you don't have to wonder about anything. He shows you absolutely everything you'd ever want to know.
Yeah, sure.
Because do you remember that sense of wonder that you get with the first Jurassic Park and Sam Neill
first seeing the brachiosaurs?
Yeah, taking those glasses off, and you feel what he feels, which is like, wow, that really is a dinosaur walking on that grass.
And that moment...
It doesn't have any of that kind of wonder.
Yeah. Even when they try and milk that moment, the moment when Ian Malcolm and Eddie and Nick see the stegosauruses for the first time. So this is Vince Vaughn's and Richard Schiff's first time as seeing a dinosaur, and they have that wonder. And Ian Malcolm's very much like, yeah, I've seen it before, it's fine, yeah, it's all ooh-ah now, but it'll be running and screaming later.
Yeah.
That's how you feel. You are in his position. You are the guys shouting at everyone else going, guys, this is going to get really scary really quickly. Why are you still here? Why are you wondered by this?
Yeah.
When you've got a cynic in that situation as the lead character, it sort of puts you in their place, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And, there's so much of it which you could apply the term overkill to.
Yes.
And that includes, I'm afraid to say, Ian Malcolm.
Yeah.
I suddenly only became aware of it watching this when, they've made Jeff Goldblum the main character, which means he is in most scenes.
Yes.
And so it's like, I've suddenly realised I like Ian Malcolm in small doses.
Yeah.
In fact, I love him in small doses in the first Jurassic Park. because he's not the centre, because he is the one at the back, like almost like the cynical one of the group, like...
Or posed with his shirt off, as if we remember in Jurassic Park.
Exactly.
Just being very Goldblum-y.
Exactly. But that's the thing, he was a much sharper character, I thought, in the first one. As in, like, the way he dressed with those glasses and stuff.
Yeah.
And really seemed to strut around.
Yeah.
And then the bit that we really laughed at when we were watching it, again, in the Royal Albert Hall, was him absolutely... unashamedly posing
like a calendar,
like a calendar with his bare hairy chest out. That's quite a different character to the quite realistic, to some extent, character that we see in this movie.
It's sort of generic hero, isn't it?
Yeah, he suddenly becomes a generic action hero,
which is what confused me about the whole thing. So the whole premise of this movie, let's start from the beginning. So the whole premise of this movie is they've got to find a reason why to get the main characters back to the dinosaur island.
Yes.
So what's happening is there is a separate island just southwest of Isla Nublar, where Jurassic Park happened, where they grow dinosaurs and where the dinosaurs were bred before they were moved to the island. And that is now a sanctuary where the dinosaurs roam freely without any barriers.
Yeah.
For some strange reason, Richard Attenborough. Keep on saying Richard Hammond. We're going to call him Richard Hammond. Richard Hammond now wants them to go back to the island for a reason I can't really discern beyond the fact that they want to observe and document. I think it's a very non-specific explanation.
But yet, for the first sort of like third of the movie, it seems to all be exposition and all talking.
It's 45 minutes about explaining this for some strange reason, and
yet we're still that lost. We're like still don't quite get the final drive that takes them to that island. But anyway,
and the people they get on the team, and this is explained quite heavily. They have the paleontologist played by Julianne Moore. They've got the documentarian played by Vince Vaughn. You've got an equipment guy by Richard Schiff. And why do they want a mathematician? A chaos theorist?
Well, that was Ian Malcolm's job.
What? Yeah, exactly. Why? What does Ian Malcolm have to offer? Why do they want him on the island? What's he going to do?
Ian, you must come on this expedition. We need some cynical maths in this situation. When you're being chased by a big dinosaur,
exactly.
What do you need?
Quadratic equations.
Exactly. Yeah, good one. Yeah, nice idea. Quote Ian Malcolm.
It just I really just can't get over that, and that's why. He was a scientist trying to sign off. It made sense why he was there on the original Jurassic Park. He wasn't an action hero. He was a bystander, a scientist.
Yeah, and this thing was happening around him.
Exactly. Why he's not got any other skills beyond having a good mind, which is useful, but I just don't understand why he was there.
Yeah,
and that's why. And I don't think the movie understands why he's there either. So they just have to lose that mathematician, that sort of the character we liked in Jurassic Park, and just mould him into being a generic action hero.
The trouble with this being a sequel is it feels as if it's host and audience reaction, and they've already done, like the Money Men have already done their survey, if you like.
Yeah.
Oh, so you responded to, and your favourite character was Ian Malcolm. why don't we make Ian Malcolm the main character?
Exactly.
Oh, you like the Hitchcockian moments, like the bits in the kitchen. Oh, so why don't we have some more jumpy bits where, you don't quite know where they're going to spring from.
And you like seeing the dinosaurs. Let's bring them in earlier. So, and I think...
And it feels like it's just going through ticking boxes of what they believe is going to make an audience happy.
There was a making-of documentary of The Lost World, and I can't remember who said it. It wasn't Spielberg himself. Maybe it was Frank Marshall. Maybe it was the producer. Maybe it was Stan Winston, the effects guy. But apparently that one of them received fan mail saying, oh, I really want the dinosaurs to be seen sooner. Can we do that? And that's what made them think, oh, it's a really good idea. They got a lot of response from the audience saying, but the audience doesn't know what they want. They're not filmmakers.
Yeah.
You shouldn't always tailor and pander to what fans want.
Yeah. No, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's a problem of what's happening in cinema now as well, just to broaden the chat. It feels like, particularly with things like Star Wars, it feels like the producers are giving the audience what they want, and what they think they want and what they actually want are completely different.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's almost like cinema or story by committee. It doesn't work.
Well, it's interesting. I'm surprised Spielberg went with like introducing the dinosaurs earlier, because he's established on Jurassic Park and he's established on Jaws
because he doesn't have...
the absence of the threat makes the threat seem more real and more scary.
And we said before, he of more than anyone else in the cinematic world really doesn't have to pander to sort of surveys and things.
It's true.
Surely he can turn around and say, guys, I think I know
exactly
what works.
Guys, I'm Steven Spielberg?
Yeah. And I can tell you for sure that restraint works, is what his response should have been.
Well, yeah. Well, he's been on a break, hasn't he? He's got some screen rust. I don't know. 4 years off.
Maybe, yeah.
That's probably not it, is it? Anything else? You said you had a list of things.
Yeah, my little subtitle for it was stuff that works against it. So I've already said I'm not sure there's much wonder in it, because we've already established all of the wonder from the first one.
Yeah.
Like, wow, there are dinosaurs. You cannot recapture that.
Mm-hmm.
We saw very realistic looking dinosaurs in the first one, so it's just sort of more of the same. There's a lot of characters in this, and very few of them are defined.
Yes.
I remember watching a couple of those scenes where all the mania is happening, and particularly once the huntsman and the people who are there to observe team up, a lot of it is very dark, and it's basically just heads and bodies running around in a dark jungle.
Yeah, so especially...
And I remember thinking at the time, like, which one of those 30 people I can see do I actually care about dying or not?
Well, it's as the goons, the people from InGen who come to the island in order to capture the dinosaurs and bring them back to San Diego. They are just fair picking, aren't they? They're not really characterised at all.
Yeah, we haven't really stressed this in our synopsis, but basically, to begin with, for the first... Would say half the movie, there's two groups, if you like. There's our team that we sort of know, has got led by Ian Malcolm, and they're there to sort of observe, and Vince Vaughn is in there as well, and Julianne Moore. And then there's a group of trophy hunters, and then it turns out, they need to sort of club together to defeat their current situation, which is they're all being attacked.
Get off the island. Yeah. I think so I agree that there are a lot of characters there that you don't really care about. I do think, actually, though, the named ones, the people who are sort of famous actors, you do actually
Pete Postlethwaite, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Pete Postlethwaite. That's it from their side, and the good guys.
Yes, and the guy who is the mute Swede from Fargo. You mentioned his name earlier.
The mute Swede.
The guy who gets pecked.
Pete Stormare.
Because he's the mute Swede in Fargo.
Yeah. So those ones you do sort of connect with, but I think it's because they're more they're famous actors. What my problem with it is
they're famous actors, they're recognisable faces, and you already have a connection with them.
Yes.
Oh, I like that actor in that other thing. Like, for example, I know that guy as the mute Swede from Fargo. Oh, he was really funny in that, which makes me instantly like him a little bit more. Even though his character was actually quite superficial, you don't really get to know him that well.
True. But so that was leading on to my problem, is the fact that the characters are painted in very, very broad strokes, and these broad strokes are generic stereotypes that you see throughout not just specifically the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies, but also generic action movies as well.
Yeah.
So we've got Ian Malcolm, the generic action hero. You've got a corporate sleazeball, who's just interested in money and selling out and not really painted.
Yeah, he's kind of a combination of the lawyer in the first one.
Exactly.
Who gets eaten in the toilet. And
the worst aspects of Richard Hammond.
Exactly. We are just calling him Richard Hammond. Yeah.
I'm going with it. So you've got Hammond himself, who is the typical old man who's unwell in a bed, which is the same in a lot of the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies. You have that same character, specifically James Cromwell in the latest Jurassic World movie, almost shot for shot remake of that sort of scene when he was in the bed initially talking to Ian Malcolm. They've got the same drip, the same little coat, the same dressing gown on.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
You see the archetype so much.
Exactly. You've got the hunter, who you've had Muldoon in the first movie.
Yeah, he's a double, isn't he? Pete Postlethwaite is a literal double of.
If it was anyone else apart from Pete Postlethwaite playing that character, it would have been a generic role. Yeah. Pete Postlethwaite does elevate it, but that's just because he's Pete Postlethwaite.
Yeah, because he's a good actor.
Yeah.
But yeah, the character as written on the page would literally be like, let's take him straight out of that movie and put this guy whose face is slightly different.
Yeah, exactly.
in this movie.
They've been wearing the same thing.
Yeah.
You've got the child in peril. And you've got the local fisherman who doesn't want to go to the island because it's called Cinco Muertes or something like that. It's all the Isles of Death.
So you're saying you got the child in peril, but I would also say this is Ian Malcolm's daughter that they establish in the first quarter of the movie. But I was going to say it's not remotely from her perspective. This story is not from her perspective at all.
No,
in the way that quite a few of the scenes, particularly like the kitchen scene. And the stuff in the car in the first one is very much from Timmy and Lex's point of view.
Yes, that's true. And that's why you care for them.
Yeah, and that makes you feel extra vulnerable. Oh, they're only little children and there's such a big dinosaur.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't really feel that much sympathy for her because we just don't get to know her.
No, not at all. You're right.
It's not her fault. We just don't get to know her.
But they do spend some time on their relationship, Kelly's and Malcolm's relationship. They do talk quite a bit about it. They have a few scenes together, but that connection isn't established.
But it is an attempt, isn't it, to show that he has developed ever so slightly from kind of an absent
a shirt-off sex god.
Yeah. But he never keeps his word, remember that?
Yeah.
And then at the end he does sort of save them, but...
Yeah, but that's just... It's a tired trope in movies, isn't it?
It's very tired. And it's sort of... It's just not done as well as the development of Dr. Grant in the first one.
Yeah.
Where he's a reluctant father.
Yeah.
It's the same idea, but
yes,
just done a lot weaker in this.
Yeah, I know. But you did mention Lex and Tim. They do appear in this movie. We mentioned that beforehand. In a really awkward scene. Did you find that really awkward?
It was really awkward, yeah.
Like they were just sort of standing there not really knowing what to do. Like, why am I genuinely saying, why am I here?
They run down the stairs and hug him and then just say...
How much am I getting paid for this?
What am I doing now?
But, fair enough.
What's Richard Hammond like in real life?
I think I saw an interview with Joe Mazzello. He said that moment put him through college.
Oh, really?
With, that little cameo.
He's suddenly like, right, I need a degree.
Yeah, exactly. Job done.
Not financially, just, oh my God, I need to think about other options here.
Things have taken off.
Yeah, so we both said, because we were both a little bit hungry and things, then we both did sort of look at each other when it was revealed that, Ian Malcolm's daughter suddenly appeared on the island for the first time. And we're like, how did that come about?
Yeah.
Suddenly she just opened a door and she was there. There was no discussion. In fact, Ian Malcolm seemed quite reluctant to even go himself. So why would he take his vulnerable daughter?
So, yeah, I know. So the only thing so you saw her sneaking around the trailer, which eventually goes to the island. So I think you're meant to assume that she snuck into the trailer. But that assumes the fact that when they were on the mainland, that their last interaction, there wasn't a goodbye or anything like that. So
yeah, just like, I've misplaced.
Oh, she's gone.
I've misplaced her.
I'm sure someone's looking after her. I'm sure someone's picking her up.
Very true.
So it just assumes that she's just gone and there's been no explanation for it, which just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
If your child goes missing, you don't assume, I'm sure she's fine, someone's picked her up. You don't assume that.
Or someone must have picked her up. That's a relief.
Yeah, phew, exactly. Out of my hair. So, yeah, the kid ends up accidentally on the island as a plot device and just stays there not doing much apart from a bit of gymnastics every now and then.
Yeah, that's true. Just whenever she gets into trouble, gets on the...
Bless her. I don't know who
bars.
the actress is. She gives it her best, but I just don't think the part was there. It's not her fault. Can I talk about some things that I liked, though?
Yes, yeah, sure.
So I think we've been a bit negative on it so far, but we did say... I still enjoyed it. It was still an enjoyable watch. If you forget and if you try and wash your brain of all the major plot holes in it, there are some really good moments. So that trailer scene where the two T-Rexes try to save the baby T-Rex and the trailer goes over the cliff and, Julianne Moore falls to the bottom on that glass and you can see the glass slowly cracking over the water below.
Yeah.
It's super tense. And
tense. And that was the most tense moment for me, and that's probably my favourite scene, and it hasn't got any dinosaurs in it.
Exactly, yeah.
Which comes, again, down to this sort of good technique.
Yeah.
Which, in a lot of the other scenes in this movie, is sort of missing.
Yeah.
But it goes to show that, it's exactly the same technique that's being applied in the kitchen scene in the first one.
Yeah.
Not revealing too much, drawing out that, that awful moment where it feels inevitable that she's going to drop.
The silence as well, and then just the slow cracking as that. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, but then after that, I would say the scene is maybe twice as long as it needs to be. I would like her to go from surviving the glass once it finally breaks to coming straight back up top off the rope. Instead, there's that whole thing where it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like then they strap the RV thing to a car, and then it's like you expect just the little engine of that car to be able to pull the big RV thing back over the cliff is a bit optimistic in all that mud. And
I think the reason they're doing that is they're trying to give Eddie a moment before he dies. So I agree, it is drawn out, but Eddie's one of the biggest heroes in this whole thing, and he just doesn't get his due at all. So they give him a moment where he's actually being the hero. He's just getting on with things, and he's very selflessly acting to save everyone else without thinking about his own safety.
That's true.
But you're right, I do agree it is drawn out, but I think he needed that moment to make his death more significant for us.
Yeah.
And I think his death was... So,
his death is quite a shocking one.
It's the most gruesome death in the movie.
Yeah.
And it was the one that really upset me as a child.
Yeah.
Because he's a good guy and he gets eaten. And he's busy, he's saved everyone and then he gets eaten. And that really upset me because I didn't like the good guys dying when I was a kid. And I think Eddie is the most resourceful, self-sacrificial. He's the biggest hero in this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the one that made me quite upset. So in that trailer, did you know how that was filmed, the trailer scene?
No.
So they had to make their own cliff in order to dangle a trailer off.
Right.
And what they did is they took the multi-storey car park outside of Universal Studios.
Oh, right.
And turned half of it into a rocky cliff face.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. They hung all the stuff off and filmed all the abseiling scenes just outside in the car park, just outside.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That you can, in the making of documentary, you can, which is on YouTube, you can watch all that. It's really quite cool.
That is quite cool.
Mm.
What always bugged me about the first Jurassic Park, and it's the same slight bugbear that's in this, which is they don't establish that there's a big cliff drop-off when it's still a really pleasant day in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly it goes...
Yes, you're right.
The cliff almost comes from nowhere.
Yeah.
So, yes, the T-Rex has bitten through all of the electric wires. That's fine. I'm fine with that because it's set up that there's no electricity.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of a storm, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
And then it's suddenly...
For goodness sake.
And then it suddenly...
Yeah.
The car just comes off a cliff. It's like, well, you haven't established where on that track that the car is on and where those fences are.
Exactly.
You haven't established where that drop-off is.
You're losing tension.
You are really, because it sort of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it feels very, not tacked on, but kind of like, oh, and the next thing is you won't believe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's a cliff.
Oh, trust my luck. What a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then there's sharks in the water.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And you're in the middle of Sharknado, you know? And then, when you're trying to get out, you're trying to cross the beach and it becomes Blood Beach.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And then you get home, you switch on the TV, and it's just the Star Wars prequels on. It's like, oh no! What a day!
One of the first notes that I made was, remember you have the young girl with the family on the beach, and then, you know, they're being served by waiters and...
Oh yeah,
like that.
the posh British family.
Yes, and then the little girl goes off.
Sound like the family from Empire of the Sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the little girl goes off, and she hears some rustling in the bushes, and then there's quite a cute little dinosaur and stuff.
Yeah.
That reminded me so much of, I think it's either the first or second chapter of the book, of the first Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little scenes where lots of people suddenly meet these, you know, I think they're just described as like, oh, what a cute little lizard you hear in the dialogue.
Okay.
And then suddenly, you know, they suddenly get bitten, or they have some strange mucus on them and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of suddenly like, oh, that's a bit from the book.
Yeah.
Little moment for me.
Okay.
I remember when that happened.
So you mentioned the novel. So I thought it's probably a good time to talk about the origins of the whole thing. So why do you think Spielberg agreed to do this as his next project?
Do you think to some extent it's maybe... not playing it safe, but as we have established, he took a little hiatus from a very difficult movie.
Yeah.
I mean, thematically and just traumatic.
You mean like a palate cleanser from Schindler's List?
A palate cleanser, perhaps, yeah. Because it is so harrowing. It must be so harrowing to make, because it's a very harrowing experience to watch.
Because it was going to be a different director direct this. It was going to be Joe Johnston, the guy who did Jurassic Park 3.
Yes, who Spielberg would know, because he was a special effects guy on Star Wars, etc. He's like an ILM guy.
He is, yeah.
And he also did like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
He did that,
so he's very technically
the
proficient.
Page Master as well.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
The Page Master. I recognise the name.
Keeper of the books. And guardian of the written word. I don't know, it's one of the films I remember really well as a child.
I'm going to check that out.
It was Christopher Lloyd.
It
was like half animation, half real world.
Has it got Macaulay Culkin in it?
Macaulay Culkin.
I do remember it then.
He meets like loads of books. The fantasy book, which was Whoopi Goldberg voice, I think.
Yeah.
Horror. I can't remember who did that. And adventure. I think Patrick Stewart was the book that did that.
That's cool.
Yeah. No, it was really, I don't think it's a very good film, but I really loved it as a kid.
Yeah. I'd like to see it again now. Yeah.
But anyway, so Joe Johnston was going to develop this, but then scheduling conflicts came in. I think he was directing Jumanji at the time, and then couldn't do it. So Spielberg was going to be a producer on this, but then eventually stepped into the directing shoes. Maybe it was to maybe he'd seen what happened to the Jaws franchise,
perhaps,
and wanted to ensure a degree of quality control. I mean, the sequel was inevitable.
Yeah, it was, because it was so successful.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were definitely putting pressure on Michael Crichton.
Yeah.
Who we said before, but I'll say it again, is the author of that book. So it's like, well, do you think, from Spielberg's point of view, do you think if Michael Crichton, because initially he had resisted, saying, no, I don't need to write another novel.
Yeah.
I think he was coming at it
from
a point of view
of bring back Ian Malcolm from the dead.
Yeah, I think he was coming at it from a point of view of like, I think it's fine if you guys want to make sequels, but I don't need to write a sequel novel.
Which is interesting.
But he did have his arm twisted, because he was suddenly like, oh, I do have an idea actually.
Yeah.
So do you think if you're coming at it from Spielberg's point of view, which is like, well, if Michael Crichton believes in it, and I liked his book enough to turn it into the original Jurassic Park, does it not give you a little a little boost?
Maybe, but it is interesting that I don't think many elements from Michael Crichton's The Lost World made it into the movie.
Yeah, that's what I heard,
Yeah, that there was...
I haven't read The Lost World. I've read the first one.
No, I haven't either, but I think the premise, the reason they get to the island stays the same. That sort of exposition at the beginning. And that trailer scene that we were talking about, the very tense trailer scene, was in there.
Right.
And that's about it. That whole T-Rex storming San Diego is not in there at all.
Yeah.
The sort of, I think the more prominent role of InGen as being the role of corporations as being evil, and, monopolies being dangerous, and business using things for, nefarious means is a very Michael Crichton-y theme.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So that very much feels like his hand on it. But apart from that, a lot of the stuff was actually written by and developed by Spielberg. So the script was changed by Spielberg and David Koepp.
Yeah.
Yeah, so David Koepp had worked on the original Jurassic Park as well, and on other things like Mission Impossible.
And of course, he wrote Last Crusade as well.
Did he write Last? Oh, of course he did. Yeah. We mentioned actually David Kirk does make a starring role in this movie. He is the guy when the T-Rex attacks San Diego who tries to run into a video store and ends up getting eaten before he gets in there.
He does.
And has a nice scream.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure the scream quite holds up as a brilliant piece of acting. It's very much sort of like,
That's very good.
Yeah.
Do you know what David Kirk gets credited as?
Video store.
No, he's just unlucky bastard.
That's his credit.
That's his credit.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
But what I don't understand is that they had a setup for a second Jurassic Park movie written into the first Jurassic Park. When Dennis Nedry,
Yes.
Wayne Knight's character, has that shaving foam can full of the genetic material he has stolen
Yes.
as part of corporate espionage, and when he gets killed by I can't remember the name of the dinosaur now.
The one that
the
spits.
Spinosaurus, I think. No,
The one that spits.
the one that spits. Yeah. When he gets killed by them, that shaving foam can, a big note is made of that can being lost and buried. You know, and it focuses on it as in, this is going to be important. Remember this for later.
Yeah.
And since then, it's never been mentioned in any of the movies since then.
Well, apparently, doesn't it get picked up for the third one?
Does it?
I think it does. Yeah.
You know what? The third one is just, I've erased it in my brain.
I think.
Does it?
I think.
Okay. Well, tweet us if we're wrong.
Yeah.
Or it's because I don't know.
But you're right. There's a perfect setup for something interesting to happen there.
Yeah.
And not just the same.
And
same
also,
movie.
it's not like Michael Crichton would have seen the first movie, and he could have written that into his second book. But yeah, chose something different.
Yeah.
And also, it's interesting that they didn't go with Sam Neill and Laura Dern again.
Yeah.
If they were looking for an action hero, they were already contracted for another movie, and they weren't used till Jurassic Park 3.
Yeah.
So I don't know why did they think they went with Ian Malcolm rather than Sam Neill? Oh, do you think it was a Pet Independence Day?
Independence Day.
Yeah.
Well, because
Jeff Goldblum has a sort of starring role as an action hero in that. That would have come out in '96. Made a lot of money.
And as I say, I think they did their surveys and people said, who's your favourite character? And they preferred Ian Malcolm over Alan Grant because Alan Grant is a bit more straight-laced.
True.
And stuff, isn't he? He just sort of gets on with stuff.
True. Maybe they would have been put off his performance in Event Horizon as well. Which would have happened in between.
But Dead Calm, and Sam Neill's very good in Dead Calm.
When did Dead Calm come out? I've not seen Dead Calm.
Oh, 93, something like that.
No, okay.
Which is the same year hang on, that's the same year as Jurassic Park. Maybe it's 94.
Okay. Well, just make updates, shall we? Yeah,
Let's make updates.
Okay, 1894.
Well, basically, let me put it this way: it's when Billy Zane still had hair.
Is that your before Christ and AD? It's before's hair and after hair.
Yeah,
love it. And so we're coming up to year 4 of Wig. This whole film, it did feel like a different tone to the Jurassic Park. I think we've established that.
Yeah.
It is darker, but the similarities to a sort of King Kong movie were very, very heavy.
That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, so
especially all of that San Diego stuff in it comes back.
Especially San Diego stuff. But if you look back, even on that island stuff, that island adventure where people are trying to survive and get picked off one by one is very much similar to a Kong sort of movie.
Yeah. There was one shot which really, I wrote it down because it's just like, that is a shot straight out of a Ray Harryhausen 1950s style of little person fighting big monster.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we had that new type of dinosaur, which we didn't get in the first one? The one which has got the sort of spikes on its tail?
You mean Stegosaurus?
Is it Stegosaurus?
Yeah. So the ones we first see?
Yeah.
Yeah, Stegosaurus.
Stegosaurus.
Yeah, the most common type of dinosaur.
I think you'll find they're all extinct.
It's like one of the
There's nothing common about a dinosaur, Luke.
It's the most famous dinosaur.
But do you remember it sweeps over Julianne Moore? She has to duck and all that kind of stuff.
And then she's in the log, and then the tail comes and
It's just so much like Fay Ray, sort of like trying to run away from...
Yes.
Because there is a King Kong and dinosaur fight, isn't there, in the original King Kong?
There is, yeah.
You're like, they do so much of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's usually like... It makes me think of one of my favourite movies, actually.
Yeah.
Jason and the Argonauts.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they always have little people with spears fighting big...
Yeah.
Greek myth monsters.
And if you were ever wondering, like, beforehand, oh, this feels a bit King Kong-y, and then they go full Kong by bringing the T-Rex to San Diego.
They do, yeah.
Which feels really weird.
It feels almost like a different movie, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite a cool concept, and some of the images I quite like. I quite like the idea of the big dinosaur going through all of those houses and seeing the drinking from the swimming pool.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that's actually quite cool.
It's very Spielberg-y, isn't it?
But it's also just
suburbs and giant monster, yeah.
It's also just a little bit odd. It feels like a different
transition,
movie.
Because they're fleeing the island and they get away in the helicopter, and then almost the next scene is, they're in different clothes and now they're trying to get into the harbour where the boat's about to arrive.
Yeah.
So clearly there's been a massive time gap, but that's not really.
And he's only had
explained.
He's only had 2 sedatives. That T-Rex.
Yeah.
Quite a big dinosaur.
True,
Even though they do
yeah.
say, he was given quite a lot. It's like,
yeah.
Really, it's sort of knocked him out for a week or something, has it?
Well, it depends on the half-life of the drug, doesn't it? Difficult to say. If you were, like what I was saying, if you were wondering, it just goes full Kong, and even the boat that they bring him in on is called the SS Venture.
Is it? Which is the King Kong boat?
Which is the King Kong boat that brought King Kong to New York.
Yeah.
So he arrives and then causes mayhem, and I don't know, it just.
The biggest criticism of King Kong in all of its versions, including the Peter Jackson one, because he didn't want to hide away from the criticism of the original, which is, how do they get King Kong from the island to New York?
Yeah.
Because you remember, it just fades out.
Yes.
It's like, we won't deal with this.
And never mind.
And never mind, he's in New York. That's all you need to
exactly.
know.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the logistics.
Yeah.
So it's got a little bit of that about it. Okay, fine, yes. It did, it was sedated. You see it sort of locked up a little bit. But then it's also a little bit like, and moving on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the problem with that, I think there was a cutscene where it was explained, but what you see in the movie is the people go onto the boat and they realise that the boat is just populated with people's hands rather than no actual crew. So, and the boat has just come ramming through without stopping. It's come straight into the port and crashed into the harbour. But the dinosaur's still locked up and needs to be released. So, but yet everyone who's on the, so apparently the T-Rex can't get out and needs to be released externally. But everyone externally is dead.
That's true.
Having been eaten. How has that happened?
It sort of opens
without the dinosaur having.
It opens from the top, doesn't it?
Exactly. Without the dinosaur having gotten out, eaten people, got someone to press a button, and then got back in quickly.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's true. Do you remember when the ship went through the dock?
Yeah.
It's very 1941.
Yeah, it was very.
Because, we didn't just have the boat go through the dock.
1941, the movie, by the way.
Yes.
If you haven't listened to the previous episode, listen.
Yeah. Because we then had a couple of cars go through barriers. We had something else, like a bus, go through a bunch of cars. It wasn't just one thing. It started to get on a roll, didn't it? Things going into things.
It felt like Steven Spielberg started to get a bit excited about the whole process of I'm making a Kong movie.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
You say this is a darker movie. There are things like that.
Yeah.
Which is straight out of Blues Brothers or 1941, which is ridiculous. And remember, it starts quite ridiculous. Do you remember when you have that woman screaming and the next shot, which is in a reverse shot as if it's what she's looking at, is Ian Malcolm stood behind an exotic poster.
With his mouth open.
Yawning?
Yeah.
I've seen this all before. And then he steps away from the poster and it turns out he's on the subway.
Yeah. That was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
There's
nothing darker than the original Jurassic Park about that.
But I think the reason it feels lighter is because that whole San Diego scene was sort of thought of on the fly. So that's not how the original script ended. They
were going to shoot in New Zealand, weren't they?
Yeah.
And then they lost the permission, I think. And then they're like, right, fine, we'll just shoot it in San Diego.
Exactly. Spielberg decided that, we'll just do a scene where a T-Rex comes to San Diego. He sort of changed his mind, and they sort of wrote that as they went, at least much later on into the movie. And that part was not in the script at all. This was all sort of made up, and because of that, you can see sort of Spielberg getting more excited. Let's have this crash into this. Let's have Grish go into this, and we can have we'll have David Kurt being eaten, and then he'll go into a Blockbuster Video. Blockbuster Video was sort of like a Netflix, but in a shop.
But involves more hardware.
Yeah, exactly. You needed a card to get a Netflix subscription, and you had to get look it up on Wikipedia. Did you see some of the posters in that blockbuster?
Yeah, was it King Lear or something?
Arnold Schwarzenegger and King Lear.
Yeah.
Which I think was a neg. So that was Jurassic Park. I think was released at the same time as Schwarzenegger's Last Action Hero.
Right. Yeah.
And obviously Jurassic Park trounced, the box office records and beat Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
And in Last Action Hero, there is a film within a film. As you know, Schwarzenegger plays is an actor on a film.
Yeah.
There's a Schwarzenegger playing Hamlet in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's like a little Last Action Hero.
It could be
jibe.
Yeah.
How do you think the visual effects sort of compare to the first one? Because I think the pressure would be on ILM to do something above and beyond.
Well, let me say, I feel like the special effects hold up when you watch it now. To think that's 1997 that you're watching.
Yeah.
It's still very impressive because it looks as good, if not better, than some movies now.
Yes. Especially the CG.
Yeah.
Which does that really holds up.
Yeah.
The models, I think obviously you can tell they're models, however, you can appreciate their intricacies.
Yeah, you can appreciate the artistry that's gone into it.
Absolutely, yeah. But also I think the difference with this movie is the reason Jurassic Park effects work so well is because there is restraint in what they're showing you.
Yes.
You're seeing the head of a T-Rex, you're seeing... there's only a few scenes where there's a model where you're seeing the whole thing in Jurassic Park, and I'm thinking of the Triceratops scene.
Yeah.
And that's the one where you can tell that's a model moving it. When it's just a Tyrannosaurus Rex head or part of a Velociraptor, it's not, you don't notice it as much.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, they show everything. Did Julianne Moore's character really annoy you?
Yeah.
The problem with this is that they're all idiots. Like, they're going
he's not talking about women here. Don't generalise.
I'm sorry, I just get angry sometimes. Sorry, this particular and the other characters.
He means all the characters.
All the characters are idiots. They are going to an island of dinosaurs and are surprised when the S hits the fan.
Yeah.
They have simply no regard the fact that, or no idea that this could be a dangerous situation. When Julianne Moore first arrives and she says, she's there to observe and document, and then gets right up close to the baby Stegosaurus and starts even touching it, and then the camera goes off and the Stegosaurus roars and she gets in trouble. And then she lectures Ian Malcolm about having to just be there to observe and not get involved.
Yeah. I'm not saying they don't put the prep in, but they do end up in a cotton tent at one point.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. This will protect us.
Yeah. Keep still.
Keeps out the bugs.
If this won't protect us, nothing will. Well, do you remember when they first got to the island and they kept shouting, Sarah Harding, Sarah Harding?
Yes.
Were you expecting one of the girls allowed to...
I forgot that was...
Hiya! The blonde one. Hiya, she got Cheryl back here.
Is that where's she from? Sorry.
Girls allowed.
No. What region of England is she from?
North.
Got it. Great accent. Yes, that's exactly what I was imagining.
Yeah.
One good thing about this movie compared to the later Jurassic World movies is that the T-Rex and the Velociraptor remain the bad guys.
That's true.
Is one thing that really annoys me in all franchises. If a franchise goes on for long enough, I think I talked about this in our Jurassic Park episode, but if a franchise goes on for long enough, the bad guys inevitably become the anti-heroes.
Yes.
And that really annoys me. Having the Velociraptors inherently as, some goodness in them and, helping out the heroes really frustrates me.
But what about the end of the first one when you have the T-Rex, who has been quite bad and intimidating throughout the whole movie, suddenly comes in and is the hero in that he protects them from the Velociraptors?
I think, yes, I see what you do. I see what you mean. However, you could play that as the fact that it's just having a meal. Yeah. And it's just nature and they got lucky.
Yeah.
Whereas
It strikes quite a nice balance, doesn't it? You don't quite know whether he's saving the humans or whether he actually is just aggravated by dealing with the aggravation in front of him.
yes, they are not domesticated, which they are is what they're trying to do in Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Which is just a frustrating thing with modern movies these days.
It is. Oh, while we're talking about Julianne Moore, did you want to mention the bad medicine? Which Luke had clocked was bad medicine as we were watching it. And I said to him, if that's not a bad medicine moment, I will eat my hat. Yeah,
and I showed you, I'd put a ring around and 3 stars over it. So yeah, there's a bit where they've rescued a baby Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's broken its leg. And Julianne Moore has an ultrasound machine very, very handily. So she ultrasounds the Tyrannosaurus Rex's leg. And what is happening on the ultrasound machine is completely different to what she's doing on the leg. First of all, the image that comes up is not an ultrasound image, it's an X-ray. And it seems to have absolutely no bearing to what she is
maybe she's
what she's doing.
Maybe she's a super clever lady and she has invented an X-ray machine which is sort of like the functionality of an ultrasound machine.
But that's not operating the way that X-rays work.
Or maybe they've just made a massive blunder.
Or yeah, exactly. Well, not a massive blunder, but yeah, this is the sort of geeky annoyances that take me out of a movie. I think you'll find that there's an X-ray.
Yeah.
And also,
but no, I totally get it. I can totally see that.
But also, like the fracture that the baby Tyrannosaurus Rex, it's really not that bad. It's just a little hairline fracture. It's fine. It'll heal.
Well, at the end of the day, they do only just put a little bandage around it. They don't even put like a splint in or anything, do they?
No, they don't even put a splint in. That's true.
Literally just.
But they
bandage it.
They'll need to. The T-Rex will need to not weight bear for at least 6 weeks.
That's what ultrasound can do for you.
Absolutely sure. Oh yeah. There's a moment in there where they realise that the second team has come onto the island in order to kidnap the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And then Vince Vaughn goes, "It's okay. Hammond had a backup plan." And they're, "Oh, what's that?" "Me." And then he gets out some bolt cutters, and that's the plan. Hammond gave me some bolt cutters. Is what he should say.
Really push
rather than imagine the plan meeting beforehand. If it all goes wrong, cut some stuff.
Yeah.
I've got these. Thank you. So, yeah. Do you know the raptor set piece in the long grass?
Yeah.
You know, the one with, Theresa May would love to run in.
Yeah.
Yeah. In order to film that scene, they had to grow 8 whole acres of that sort of grain over a very long period of time, because as soon as someone filmed something in one area, it would flatten it and it wouldn't grow back.
Oh, right.
So they could only do one take in one area. So they had to do multiple takes in different areas. So they had to grow 8 whole acres of land full of this long grass in order to film it properly.
That's cool.
You won't notice this as a movie, but there is something that you can see in photos online, is the Spielberg cameo in this. And I pointed this out to you.
You didn't? I didn't see it.
We couldn't really make it out.
To make it out, yeah.
Apparently, if you look at it very, very closely or even magnify it, you can see it's Steven Spielberg. But when they're showing the CNN footage of the boat taking the T-Rex back to the island...
At the very end.
Right at the very end. You can see in the TV some faces reflected in the television screen. And apparently that is Steven Spielberg and Jeff Goldblum eating popcorn together.
Cool.
Yeah. So, the next movie we are talking about is Amistad. Please tune in. Remember to like and subscribe to our podcast. If you could leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, that would be really useful to us. So we really appreciate that.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you in advance.
And you can follow us. So please follow us on Twitter. We're at Big Boat Podcast. You can also follow us on our Instagram account at The Bigger Boat Podcast. And if you want to ask us about anything we've said or anything you'd like us to discuss, please email us on
thebiggerboatpodcast@gmail.com.
We look forward to seeing you next week.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.